Welcome to Uncomfortable, conversations about culture and Christianity. My name is Eric, and today I am joined by Rachel.
Hey guys.
And Mackenzie.
Hello.
And Alex.
Aloha.
We're all here back in the studio for another episode. This week, we are talking about something I will admit is near and dear to my heart, although I would like to make the discretion that I did not suggest this topic. But video games.
Video games.
We're going to be talking about them, maybe a little bit about their history and, the good effects, bad effects of them on our culture, and, what's a good Christian perspective to have, a healthy Christian perspective to have on video games. And I'm in a room with, as far as I understand, a lot of big gamers. I think you guys are all next level.
I am not.
You're not? No?
I'm not I'm not anti-video game, so I hope I don't come out today sounding like anti-video game man, but I'm definitely not like pro video game.
You're not on that pro level yet.
I'm definitely not.
You need to get yourself a Twitch channel, and I think you'd really take off. I don't know what game you'd play, but maybe you could be a
Solitaire.
I think you could be a Fortnite streamer.
Is that where people like watch each other play video games?
Each other. They watch one person play.
Watch a person play video games.
It's not like I tune in to watch you play a video game.
I don't understand that. Why would you watch someone else play a game when you could just play it yourself?
No,
we're getting into it already.
Are we going there?
I don't understand.
Is that a real question? I feel like I'm just going to be in defense mode for this whole episode. I will say when that really started to become popular, I was definitely kind of in that camp when I'm like, wow, what's the point of this? But I think when you look at it now, there's a lot of reasons. It's like, why do you watch anything that you watch? Why do you watch a TV show or sports commentaries or even people playing sports? I mean, it's kind of falls in that. And also a lot of times it's something people do kind of, I think, because we live in like a very passive entertainment culture now where people are like on their phone while they're watching TV and, I don't know, making a sandwich. I don't know. Everybody's doing like three things at once.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times people, kids don't have the money to go buy the video games. A lot of times it's $60 a pop or something like that. And so some people will just go and say, hey, I just want to know, because a lot of video games have really elaborate stories and people want to just watch for the story, and so they'll watch someone play for that reason.
Or all their friends know the Fortnite dances and they're like, my parents won't let me buy Fortnite.
So I want to know what this is about.
Dance.
Yeah, and Fortnite's free, by the way. This isn't an advertisement. You don't actually have to buy it. So you can download it right now on your iPad and just play through this whole episode. But no, the other side of it is things like Fortnite or Call of Duty or PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. I could keep going. Dota. Do you know anybody a Dota fan in here? No. How about League of Legends? All these games, like they're like very competitive based, and so they are a sport. They're an esport, and I mean, I can understand people kind of like, I don't know, just cringing when they hear that term like esport. Well, you got to get grass stains on your knees to play a sport, but this is where we're at, and kids they love it, and there are people who are really good at it, and people watch that. I mean, I love video games. I play a lot of video games, but I don't necessarily enjoy the sport aspect of it. Like, I don't tune in and watch a lot of that. I've watched some Fortnite competitions with my son because he really likes it, and I kind of get into it. It's like anything. You can get into it if you try.
I will say I have watched the Super Mario Smash Brothers like championship game or something. That's pretty cool. Like if you play the game and then you can see how they are doing it, you're like, what? How did they do that?
They're so much better.
It is pretty, interesting to see.
It is a skill-based thing, and I think like even like with Fortnite is like obviously just like the biggest game ever, and still is right now. And it's one of those things where those people who play it at a professional level are just like just better than the average person playing that game, and so it's entertaining to watch someone who's skilled at anything. You could watch someone who's, I don't know, what's the timber toss thing? I don't know. That sounds boring to me, but people like watching that. So
bags.
Yeah, I know. Bags.
Cornhole,
Yeah.
They have that on ESPN.
Yeah, I don't know.
Can we like define video games though? Because I think that's an important thing for people to understand is like, are we just talking about like Xbox video games, or like, are we talking about like
video games? I think that's a thing. I mean, that it's really, they're everywhere. They're on people's phones. They're on, I mean, I don't know, you name it. They're everywhere.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times people want to say, oh, that's for kids or that's whatever. But I mean, are you playing Bejeweled? Are you playing
Candy Crush?
Yeah. Are you playing anything like that on your phone right now? I hate to break it to you, but you're playing a video game. So.
Yeah. So we jumped into Twitch and and then a bunch of other things you talked about that I don't know what they mean. And
I can just keep
it's like code language. So for like the average, and maybe not even average, maybe I'm way below average, but person that doesn't know video game culture and things like that, like I kind of understand how they began and stuff. So maybe we take a step back and talk about like the history, because I do think there's probably people that like me that are just ignorant to it, that don't understand. And so I think it's important, and why I want to be in this conversation is so I can help me understand some of this a little bit more, so I can understand part of that culture. And the other part is there's just generation gaps. And so different generations obviously probably have a different view of what a video game is, how they used it, how they utilized it, how the internet changed the game literally. And so I'm sure you're, as a video game aficionado, unless you are, Mackenzie, do you have like the history on video games at all?
No.
Rachel? Or do we go to our...
Let's go.
I mean, where do I start? Like Pong? Like,
yeah, that's what...
I mean, I think Pong was definitely one of the first that kind of got into people's homes. I mean, arcades have been around, I mean, especially since the 80s. I think pinball was kind of the first. It wasn't really a video game, but it was kind of leading towards that. But I think with like the NES, the Nintendo Entertainment System, sorry, I better talk layman terms. The Nintendo Entertainment System of the late 80s. Like,
is that the thing you had to like take your cartridges and go
yeah that
blow
one.
them out so that the games would play?
That one.
I do remember that.
So like I think that was when it really took off in America. Like at first it didn't. It didn't really sell well in the beginning. But then they like repackaged it and sold it with Mario Brothers, and I think there was a package with Duck Hunt in there and Mario Brothers. And that's really when it kind of became more part of the culture, I think. But it was still very much like parents looking at it as a toy. Like, this is a thing that for my kids to play with. But there were a lot of adults at that time who were in on it, but they just, maybe they were closet.
I remember growing up, like every Christmas it would be, what's the new like system that we're gonna get? Like we started with the GameCube, but it was like a gift for all of us. So then like we'd get to wake up on Christmas morning and play the GameCube together, and then it was the Wii, and like it's like every Christmas it was the new system. So I feel like they kind of targeted Christmas and like families like and their kids with that too. Yeah,
it's a cycle that happens probably every 4 to 5 years. There's a new consoles come out from all the manufacturers, but I think that's kind of the early days of it, the arcade and the home console. And but now you're looking at like generations who've just grown up with it, and so the idea that a video game is for children, it's a pretty narrow-minded thought in my opinion. Like because that's something that I like, my generation, we grew up playing those games, and a lot of us still play those games, and some are more outspoken about it than others. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Is there any aspects of the history of it that you would want to specifically know, or like?
I think to me, as I grew up, like I said, blowing into cartridges at my friend's house to get like Duck Hunt to work and whack, 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 that whole thing.
You try to shoot the dog.
You try to shoot the things and just aiming. And that was like, I remember thinking, this is like the apex of technology. Like, how does it know I'm shooting that duck? As a little kid, it was just so big. And then, Nintendo 64, Sega Genesis, Sonic, like I understood all those kind of things. And then where I kind of fell off like in my understanding was probably when I went to college, all my friends started loving it and they started playing Halo, but then it was connected to the internet. And then I felt like from there, like I had friends that really like games, and I had a buddy that was like always like top 5 in Madden in like literally the country. Like he failed his first year of college because of this, because that's all he did was play, you know, Madden. And I was never good at any of those games. Didn't really have a passion probably because I had a passion about sports, and like I played basketball in college. And so I was like, these guys are wasting their time. Like I'm doing something real, like a real sport, you know? And so, but it felt to me like
if I would have went to college with you, I would have gotten along with you really well. I have a feeling.
Just like your my old roommate who's on your other podcast that's all about video games, but we sat by each other in church and the Lord is working, so that's good.
And I'm glad.
So yeah, how is the internet?
I don't even know how to take that.
How has the internet, like, would you say that it's made it more popularized, more available? Because I think that's in mobile devices.
Well, okay, so let's talk about like modern video games. I think the thing is like once the iPhone came out and once gaming became more accessible to the public, it's so much more broad than it ever has been. Like everybody probably has downloaded at least a game at some point on their phone just to check it out if it was free or something like that. And so games are no longer just limited to what people maybe think they are. Maybe they're like, oh, there's a football video game and then there's the Mario and Zelda and Sonic, and like that's what video games are. But it's all across the board now. There are just so many different types of games. There are independent game developers out there who are making these experiences that are going to evoke emotion in people. They're going to make it's like watching an independent film or something like that. But then there's this interaction to it where you feel like you're part of the story. And so there's a lot of different types of there's games for, like, I don't know, if you want to renovate homes, you want to just go and tear down walls and build houses, like you can do that. There's a lot of just, if you name it, there's probably a video game out there that it does that thing. So a lot, it's just, I think you can't have this narrow-minded idea of what a video game is.
And kind of the way you put it, it almost seems like a creative outlet almost.
Oh, 100%.
Like you get to do all these different things like in your own, you know, system that is just you're creating, and essentially.
Well, and I think with like the Minecraft, for example, like that really blew up, and that's a lot about creation. That's about kids get in there and they can, you know, they're learning about real world elements, and they're combining those elements to make things, and they're smelting steel, and they're like doing all this stuff, and they don't realize they're learning, but that's because it's fun. So it's like the best type of learning. Like and it is creative. It's firing those cylinders in people's brains. But yeah, so I think you cannot look at video games in a modern perspective and have like a very narrow scope of what you think that is, because it goes all over the place. So
gotcha.
So I'm curious about like online communities that play games together.
Yeah.
So how do people find community in these like online, like, would you say that people do? Because I know people who say, oh, well, I'm playing games with that person, I'm spending time with them.
Yeah.
And to me, that's so weird, because
no, I have games that I play with my friends occasionally that it ends up being, it might as well just be a phone call. Like it's an excuse to catch up. So it's like you're on there, you're with them, and it's a game that maybe it's not like a story or anything. So you're not like focused on the game necessarily. So you're playing it, but you're also just talking. And so I think there's that. I mean, I've heard stories of people getting married because they met over video games, and then now there's stuff like Discord, which is it's an app that is, I mean, think of like, it's kind of like the modern day forums where everybody can, you know, if you're really into, I don't know, whatever game you're into, maybe you're into The Sims, you really like that. So there's a Discord out there for you, and this whole community is there, and you can talk with each other, and you can voice chat, you can video chat, you can
share cheat codes.
Sure. There's still some games with cheat codes out there. Up, down, down, left, right.
Get the big heads in James Bond and shoot paintballs.
Yeah.
That was so cool.
You get it, Alex.
Thank you. I'm trying to interject my video game lingo.
But there is this other kind of dark side to it where if you're just like, I think Call of Duty is always a good example of it, where people are just getting on there and they're just matching up with random people that they have no idea who they are. And a lot of times it's maybe younger, like 12-year-old boys or, you know, teenage kids who are trying out a new vocabulary of profanity on you, racial slurs, things like that. And so,
oh my goodness,
and that can be incredibly toxic. And like they're trying to demoralize you just to help them win at a game. You know, they're trying to beat you up verbally and like, and so there was this one time I was playing Madden on the first time I ever played it online with a person. I sat down and they're talking to me and I'm like, this is so cool. I'm connecting with this person across the globe. I don't know who they are. We're having fun. We're playing this game.
Do they call you a noob?
That was a little bit before the noob era. I mean, at least it was before, like, that was more.
Good job, Alex. Good lingo.
But Thank you did look that up on Gamer Dictionary.
I heard my friend say it.
Yeah. But anyways, I was losing, and so this guy's being really nice. I started to win the football game, and all of a sudden he just started to just like psychologically dissect me and just ruin my day. Like because earlier he was talking to me about guitar, and like I play guitar, and so then like it switches to, what kind of guitar do you have? And I was like, a Les Paul. And he's like, I bet it's an Epiphone and not like a Gibson. And I'm like, yeah, it's an Epiphone. And then he just started to destroy me, and I felt so bad about myself. And that was just like, I'm not gonna say everything else he said to me, but like it was just, I felt so miserable. I walked away from that experience going, I never want to play online with people. That's terrible. Wow. But I think it's just one of those things where it's like everything in life, right? There's good and there's bad. That's to oversimplify it.
So let's talk about like our houses, like just all of our lives. Like, you have a game system in your house? Eric, we know you have, so maybe it's how many do you have? That might be the question you can answer later. For me, I guess if like an iPad and my iPhone equal video games, and I like play solitaire, usually only on airplane flights.
That's a video game.
Yeah, I know. And so that's that's the extent of video gaming. My wife and I have looked, I guess, a little bit, because my son has like the Mario Run game, or he doesn't have it. It's on my phone. So sometimes he'll play that for a limited amount of time. And so that's kind of in the Ely house, what video gaming looks like. There's no consoles, like the typical console in there. And so it's really like, it's not something I do every night or anything like that, but Netflix or reading or podcasting are things that might fill that time. What about Mackenzie? What's your household look like? You have a husband?
Yeah. Yep, I have a husband.
Wait, why does it have to be because she has a husband?
Yeah, that's true.
I was just telling people I didn't know.
Yeah, so we do have consoles. We don't really play them a whole lot. I mean, my husband plays games, but they're more like on computer stuff. I got really into Mario Party, though, and one night he was working late, and I was at home just playing it by myself for hours. And that was like the only time probably in my life I've really enjoyed them. But I got like really sucked into this game, and it was the fruit map. So I was like going around the pineapple, and I don't really know if that means anything to you guys, but it was really fun.
That could be a video game, an LSD trip. I have no idea what you're talking
Mario
about.
Mario Party.
Just kidding. No, but I think when you're describing video games, that's one of the things that I always laugh at is like, if someone doesn't get it, like it just sounds like you are crazy. Like,
that's true.
I was going around and just there's pineapple. Like, what? Okay, what's this?
Well, and I got really excited about the map, and Dylan was like, "Why this map is awful?" And I was like, "It's so exciting." The fruit. I don't know. It's dumb, but
fruit by the foot on this map.
Me and my husband, we grew up in families that played video games together, so I feel like it was kind of just like as we grew up, that's just something that was a part of our family. So when we got married, we have a Nintendo Switch, we have a PlayStation, we play on like computer games and stuff like that. So it's just kind of, I don't know, when you grow up with it, it doesn't seem like it's a weird thing to have it when you get married, and like that just becomes a part of what your family does. So we play together. I hate just sitting there and like one person is playing the game and the other person's not. So even if it's a game that I'm like, this is really dumb and I don't want to play this, I'm gonna be really bad, I have to like at least try, because it's just like, I see it more as a connecting, like do something together kind of thing than just to go into your own little world and like be by yourself. And I guess
my wife's a gamer. My kids are gamers. I mean, I don't know. We don't always play games together though, which that's kind of funny. We'll end up like separating, and we're all like doing our own thing sometimes in our house. But then there's games that bring us together and we play as a family too. So it's I don't know. It's all over the place. As far as consoles, I kind of have all of them.
Every single one.
Yeah. So.
And it seems like we all have pretty united, because I have friends that like they loved video games, like, you know, growing up. And so my wife, she didn't really play them. I didn't play them. So it just made sense. But I have friends like it's a tension point in their marriages, you know, because one, and this can happen with a lot of things, you know, but one person really values something and one person might see that as a waste of time. And so when you don't both kind of agree on that, it can cause, like I've seen in one of my friends, it caused a lot of marital tension because he really loved, I think, Call of Duty or Halo or one of those games, and you know, would play it kind of every night, and she's like, you don't ever talk to me, and then, you know, it kind of erupts from there. And so I think having even that in both people's backgrounds helps bring unity, I guess, to that. And so, and there are challenges if you've kind of grown up in a family where it's opposite, I'm sure, to have things to work through, which we can talk about that a little bit later, but like the pros, the cons, like how do we navigate discipleship in the middle of all of this, I think is important. So what about, so I did youth ministry for a little over 10 years. And so like, obviously, like I was like the uncool youth pastor that couldn't speak youth like language, but that's how I knew like words like noob and stuff like that. Cause I would like sit on my friend's couch, not playing the game, but with his headset on. So I'd have to be really close to him because it was before like Bluetooth headsets. And so it was plugged into your controller, you know? Yeah. And I would just be like, I was like good at trash talk. So I would just like, and I had an Elmo voice. And so like I would do that in an Elmo voice.
I know you really want to show that off right now. Why don't you show out?
I can't do it.
Come on.
I can't do it on the spot.
No, you can't?
No, I can't. So
maybe your best trash
maybe
talking
later in the pod. Anyway, so I would intimidate people via Elmo voice and like have them feel like you just got crushed by Elmo because my friends were good. Anyway, all that to say, I don't even know.
You just really wanted to bring up that you could do an impersonation of Elmo.
Mackenzie, what do you have to say?
Yeah.
Do you want to?
No, violence. Yeah. Okay, so one of the things, violence. From Elmo to violence. So one of the things that often would come up and parents would ask me, and I was pretty ignorant to it. So I tried to do research and at least kind of learn what games are good, bad, you know, but as there's been more and more mass shootings inside of our country and society, I think it's been one of those easy targets is because I think there are a lot of games that are like first-hand shooter games and, you know,
it's called a first-person shooter.
First-person shooter game.
Yeah, not a first-hand shooter, but that's
fine. You can use two hands, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, I think that's become one of those, especially in media, thrown out there things. And so for me, as somebody that doesn't like video games or just doesn't play video games, it's easy for me to say, well, yes, that makes sense. It desensitizes people. Like you're running around stealing people's cars, you're running around killing people, you're seeing, you know, the graphic, like in some video games, really graphic, you know, blood and things like that as people are killed. And so it's easy for me as somebody who doesn't play these games, doesn't know about that kind of stuff, to sympathize with that and say, man, I see how this would cause somebody to maybe not like be crazy or have a mental illness, but at least desensitize them towards death, because video games make it look so realistic and take out the pain in it and kind of teach you how to sneak up on people. And so you can learn a lot about those types of things, carrying out evil plots from video games. And so it can be a roadmap. And so I would say that's somewhat of a belief I've bought into. I think obviously there's a lot of things that are a part of that story, but I think it's definitely one of those things that could contribute at least towards some of that. So what are you guys' thoughts there?
I think that's a good point. And growing up, I think I kind of that's what my parents told me, is like, we're not going to play games where, you know, we played Mario Kart, or we played games that weren't really like killing other people. We're not going to play those games because, you know, that's going to be in your mind, and we don't want that to be in your mind. And I think also there has been a lot of blame on video games recently for just like the rise and just like shootings and stuff that's going on. Is just like, okay, well, they're playing these games and they're doing the shootings in the game, so it's essentially being played out in the real world now too. And so I think it is like a very fine line to like be on, because like also for kids, like their brains are still forming, like, and if your kids are starting to play these games at such an early age, like their brains are forming as they're playing these games. So there is definitely like stuff that's happening as they're playing games like this. So it's a hard one to kind of decide, and it is like, I feel like case by case, like you have to, as a parent, you have to make that own decision. And like as a future parent, I'm trying to figure out what are the boundaries that we're going to have with our kids for that.
Yeah. One game everybody's good at in America, which probably leads to this, is the blame game. You know, so that probably, like, we have to have a reason, and most of the time violence is caused by multiple reasons, but we want to pick out that big thing that we can point to, and if we eliminate that one thing, everything's going to change.
Well, the problem with that is it's always the thing that the person doesn't understand.
Yeah.
So it's like they don't understand video games. They don't play video games. So it's easy to point the blame at it because it affects them in zero ways. It doesn't, like, if you get rid of the video games, then yay, like what my life changes, not at all. So it's easy to do that. When you don't understand something, it's easy to blame it. Like that's always been the case. Like I think even like when, like I think of like my mom, and like when she grew up in the church, like she wasn't allowed to go to the movies. Like I grew up and I was raised that way. And like up until like mid 90s, I went and snuck off and saw Jurassic Park. And I had like a stress-induced headache the whole time because I thought someone was going to stick a drug needle in me or something, because I just had no idea. I heard all these nightmares about what the movies were, you know, and it was bad. Don't go to the movies. And so I think when people don't understand something, it's easy to stigmatize it. It's just, I think you said it earlier, it's ignorance. It's just something where I don't understand this. It threatens me because I don't understand it. And because of my fear, I'm going to blame it for everything because this is an easy scapegoat. And so we see it over and over through history with it, as technology advances, the new advances get thrown under the bus. Social media is that new thing now. Oh, it's the worst. It's causing high rates of suicide in teens. It's causing this. It's causing that. And it's not. And the thing is that the truth's always somewhere in the middle. Like it's not all because of social media. It's because the emphasis on family's been taken away. It's because the emphasis on self-identity is so high and all of that sort of thing. Like there's a lot of reasoning behind why things are the way they are. But if we just want to take a blanket thing and just say, this is the reason, because I'm scared and I don't understand, so I'm just going to point at the thing that I don't understand. And I think that's what frustrates me a lot, because I don't think there's, I mean, the studies that have been done, granted there are not a lot, but the correlation between violence in video games and actual real world violence, there's just no correlation there. I mean, the games that I played as a kid, there were some that were violent, but they were obviously the technology there wasn't there that it is today that makes it look so realistic. But still, it wasn't something where I'm like, oh man, that was fun. Let me get a real gun and do this. Like there's no line there. There's no logical line that can be drawn. I have lots of friends who play games that are violent, and I'm not here to defend them and say, everybody go play violent video games. It's going to be great. Like, no, I'm not saying that, but I do not see how there is a line that goes, there's something much deeper in the person that's wrong if they can get to a point where they're like, I want to do this for real now. Because a video game, for one, shooting a gun in a video game is absolutely nothing like shooting a real gun. I've done both. I can tell you it is not the same thing. Like that the desensitization of it, granted, that's probably a valued argument, or a valuable argument to have, but it's also like, okay, what about TV? What about movies? What about everything else? What about music where they, desensitize you to violence? There's all sorts of, what about literature? You can read a book that describes things like that. You can watch this is my weakness. I love investigation, discovery. Is that what it's called? IG discovery. No, I don't know. IDTV, that's what it is. Investigation discovery. But I'm always watching the murder shows on there, but that's not because I want to go kill somebody. It's a form of entertainment. Whether you want to argue whether that's a good thing to fill your mind with or not, that's probably another argument.
Yeah.
But does it actually cause people to act out this way? There is like no conclusive evidence of that.
Yeah. But would you say it is with the desensitization, the difference I would see between a video game and, those other forms of media is the first person experience. Like you are, in a movie or a book, you're reading, even watching, a murder mystery, you are not actually like the hunter, or whatever people want to call it. Like, I don't know all the proper terms, but as far as that desensitizing people, you are actually learning how to do this. There's actually other people on the other end. You're not actually violently hurting them, but like there are like pain points, like you even said, just playing Madden, because people are mean and evil and going at specific people. Like they're taking it out on another human being, even though it's in a digital world. There is like a different correlation, I feel like, when you step into a role versus just watching a role. And we do that maybe in a movie where we can identify with somebody, but like your job is to identify as somebody. Like Halloween's this week, and a lot of people will step into roles, and think because they're in that role they have, especially little kids, extra superpowers, but they can act differently or they can dress differently, and it liberates them and gives them an excuse to do something they wouldn't normally do.
Yeah, I have a question kind of going on in my head right now of just like the things that God is asking us to do in our real lives and, as we live life, like that he's called us to do. But then once we get into video games, we're not necessarily following those things just because it's a video game. I don't know. It's like, it seems like a dumb question, but like God tells us not to kill.
Yeah.
But we're going in video games and it's a video game. So we can kill. Like, I don't know. It's just kind of a weird, like, how do you?
I think it's definitely a thing of balance. I don't know. Obviously, everyone is going to be a little different about the things that they allow into their lives and they allow into their homes, and I think that's understandable and that's the way it should be. But I also think that there are so many different forms of entertainment that people are willing to consume because it's what they've always done, or it's what they like, or it's what they understand, and they are just quick to attack the thing that's not what they understand or it's not what they like. It's like if I don't like sports and Alex spends time watching sports on TV, and I could make an argument that football is a pretty violent sport, and I could say, I can't believe you waste your time watching that. I can't believe you let your kids watch that and think it's okay. Like I can't
believe we had a professional football player on the podcast.
I know. Can't believe that guy was here. But I could easily just say the same things. I could draw all the same parallels to support my argument. And that's where I think that it's hard for me to take those criticisms seriously, because it's like I'm not, and I think we can get into the dangers of video game addiction. I think that's definitely a thing we've seen where some people just can't handle it. That dopamine reward of winning a game and they got to do it again and again and again, like that sort of thing can be really dangerous. But yeah.
And I think that's a good point to make, is how is this impacting your real, like, your life? How is this impacting your home life, your family life, how you're interacting with other people? Like, I think maybe we can talk about that a little bit, because we were a little bit earlier about sometimes there's marriage troubles when, guys are too focused on their games or girls are too focused on their games or whatever. So maybe we can talk a little bit about that.
When it goes like back to the violence thing, I guess when I'm thinking, maybe this is a stupid comment, but when we're talking about all of this, I'm just thinking, but they're not real people. They're not real people. And maybe there is like a desensitizing, but obviously it would be really bad if it was like everybody you knew was running around and you were shooting them. Like that would be awful, right? We would not be okay with that.
So the other argument is, you mentioned that Mario Party game. And what did you say again? Can you explain again what you did in that? Just
Mario Party?
Yeah, what were you doing with the pineapples that you like so much?
Oh, you're traveling around a map.
Okay, and collecting pineapple?
No, collecting points.
But okay. So, when you got done with that game, did you just I gotta do this in the real world. I gotta get out there and do this in the real world, because it took over my mind now. It brainwashed me. It desensitized me. I gotta go do this in the real world now. Where are the pineapples?
When I was really little, I played, what's that game called? Duke Nukem?
Oh my gosh.
Do you guys know? I played that when I was really little all the time. And it was
I'll Google it later.
It was terrifying to me because they were going to like run around the corner and shoot at me.
Duke Nukem talk like this.
I remember
super cool.
I remember like as a little girl, it was so scary because obviously I'm a little girl and people are shooting at me, and it was like I was going to die if I didn't like shoot them. But I would never say that made me think like violence is okay. Like it was just so disconnected because it was so obvious like these are not real people. And it was more just like a thrill of like I have to do something before they get me, you know? And so I guess I was just thinking about that because that's probably my only experience with violent video games. If that's violent.
Yeah.
Did you ever play that, Eric?
What, Duke Nukem?
He knows the voice apparently, so I'm guessing that's how he got it.
I haven't played any of
really
the recent
old
ones, but yeah, the old one.
Oh, there's new ones.
Yeah, kind of ish. But
anyway,
we won't get into that.
Yeah.
I think the conversation comes to, and I'm thinking even with Halloween right now in our lives, there's haunted houses that are like around, and there's a glorification of violence. And we talked about this a little bit a few weeks ago with Pastor Mark is how do we navigate some of those things, and how do we navigate what we're letting in, to our hearts and not. And so I remember in college, I heard, because I think video games, they're morally neutral. Like I don't think there's a right or wrong. Yes, all are bad, all are good. It's a morally neutral thing. And so I remember one professor or pastor or someone, and I wrote it down, and I dug it out the other day, talking about how we deal with morally neutral things. And of course they alliterated it because that's what people in the church do. And they said when it comes to engaging with culture, there's three options. One of them is to receive. So receive things that are good, things that lead us towards righteousness, scripture, things like that. Creation, like just being in wonder and awe of God's creation. It's morally neutral, but we should receive it. The other is things that are reject. They lead us towards sin, no matter what. Every time it's going to lead you towards sin. I think like pornography is probably one of those types of things that you should reject because it's going to lead you towards sin. And then there's things that we can redeem. And those are more of the morally neutral things that are not inherently good or evil, but we have to do the work of figuring out, is there redemptive stuff that can happen inside of this thing? And so I think we would get into like this being morally neutral. I think we would all agree maybe that this is morally neutral, but how do we redeem it? And are there things inside of it to reject? And as somebody who maybe knows a little bit more about this kind of stuff, I think that side of the room knows maybe more. Like, what are some practicals in that? What are the things that we probably shouldn't even try to redeem inside of video games? Should I just get on like a violent video game and start just preaching the gospel and, saying there's life after death? You should, if you die in this game, you get a life back, but there's something
you respawn in heaven.
Yeah, but in real life, you can die and have eternal life and never really die, just like this video game. Like, is that worth it? Or are there games that you would suggest are just not worth redeeming? Or what would you say, Eric or Rachel or even McKenna?
I don't mean to completely jump off this right away, but I was thinking back to like effects that video games have on people, and I was like, my wife is going to be upset and call me out on this if I don't mention that. Like whenever I play like a racing game, she like swears that I drive like a maniac after I play those. So anyways, I'm just saying I should confess that. I don't know how from a practical standpoint, that's a hard question to answer, because if I apply that to any other thing that people engage with, it's just as difficult in some ways. Like, we could list off all sorts of hobbies right now. I mean, whatever that might be for people, and you can ask that same question, and it's kind of the same answer. Like, I don't know specifically to video games. I'm not sure how you would rectify that, I guess. I don't know. Maybe do you have a better point?
Well, no, I'm just trying to think. I'm thinking about like between my husband and I and how we see things differently. Like if I watch a like horror movie like trailer on the TV, I will have nightmares for 3 days and like it won't affect him like at all, you know? And so like the effects on people like differently. I mean, that's a reality of like I'm terrified and he doesn't even get fazed by it. And so maybe that's another like player in this kind of conversation of just how are people affected by this differently, because I know that I'm going to be scared for a week. So I'm not going to look at these things. I'm not going to intake these things because it brings fear into my heart and it's not good for me. But for him, it doesn't really affect him. So does that make sense? Like, how do we gauge that as well within this conversation?
So back to your question, Alex, are you saying your question was though, how can we redeem it? Is that what you were?
Yeah. How can we redeem it, or where are parts that we're glorifying the broken nature of this world? You know, I think violence is something that is a part of the broken nature of this world. I think like death, you know, and all those types of things are part of the like we can as Christians say, man, in this redeemed world, there's going to be no more sickness, no more pain, no more death, all of those kind of things. That's the way God wanted to. And so in our hope to bring heaven to earth, and our hope to rationalize that, and to all of us individually do that, and then even more corporately, how do we make those decisions? You know, I think like one of the scriptures that I try to use as a good test is Philippians 4:8. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about these things. And so is that a good litmus test, you know, for you, or I don't know. I'm just thinking on the fly a little bit about those types of things that popped in my head. Like, should we partake in things that are a part of the brokenness in this world and find entertainment in those?
I really don't. I don't think I have a good answer for that.
Yeah.
Because I think I could get really legalistic about it, and I think any of us could. And I think it goes back to that, well, it's not for me.
Yeah.
So I could easily get legalistic about the things that you enjoy that I don't. And I think that's human nature. It's because it hurts me none at all to say I'm not going to do the thing you enjoy because I don't enjoy it. And so it would be really easy for me to point out the shortcomings and how that doesn't glorify God. And like I could tear that apart very easily because it has no effect on me.
Yeah, I could do that in basketball. Like I love basketball, but like if unity is an ultimate goal for God's kingdom, one of the most disunifying times every week is when I'm playing against guys in basketball, because I want to beat those guys. Like I want to beat them. I want to be the winner. I want them to lose, and I want them to feel it, you know? And so that's a discipleship thing in my life.
So I do think when you mention morally gray, I think when things fall in that, I think that like we have to kind of exemplify grace there. And maybe we don't understand it. Maybe we do think it's wrong. Maybe for us it is wrong. Maybe like you said, Rachel, you said watching even a trailer from a scary movie, that affects you. That affects your mental state. You know that's something you should not do. And I think when you're talking about video games, I mean, yes, if you're a parent of a child who's playing it and you start to see behaviors coming from them that are not good and something that you need to talk to them about, like, then let's like do that. That's that's the part of being a parent where you need to come in there and be responsible for your kid and take action. But it's really hard for me to say like, yes, this is the way. Like if you're playing Call of Duty, you better be witnessing to everyone on there or you're doing a bad job. That would be like me saying if you go to the movie theater to watch a movie, you better wear your Jesus Saves t-shirt, and then at the end of it, make sure you have a parable ready to compare the movie to and save everyone in that room. Like, I don't know. I think that we can, as humans, we can connect with one another in healthy communities. I think video games definitely afford you that opportunity. Like, there's definitely ways for you to meet people, talk to them, share your beliefs respectfully with one another, and then you are kingdom minded in that. And I think that's powerful. I think that's a gracious way to look at it. And I think that's a way that sometimes is just overlooked and and thought of, oh, it's just the video game nerds. They're all atheists anyways, or something like that. I think people get really dismissive about that culture and community.
Yeah. And I think the practical thing is a little hard for us, because for us to sit here and say, okay, here's the next 4 things that you need to do with video games. That's just like, that's not realistic. Like, we can't tell you what to do. And Mackenzie and I we were talking about this the other day, of just like us telling people what to do. Like, I think for me, my hope is that we have these conversations and that people hear this and they're like, oh, I've never even really thought to think about video games and how that affects my life as a believer. Like, and that we're just bringing these topics up for people to start to bring to God themselves. And like, essentially that's going to be the best thing for you to do, is to be like aware of these topics, and then go to God, go to scripture, find the answers for yourself, because we can tell you all these things to do, but if you haven't gone the route to work through your heart and figure out, you know, how is this impacting me, and ask God yourself, then it's not really going to do much for you.
Yeah, that's good. Right. I don't ever want anyone to do something because I said so, right? And I think that's what we kind of were raised by parents in that kind, or at least my parents said that sometimes. And like, I should never have that kind of authority in someone's life. Maybe the Spirit working through me, but it should be in tandem. That's part of what the community is in Christ, is that, man, I could do a lot of damage if I just said, because Alex said so, I'm a pastor, I've got that title, you need to do it. If you're not going to even do it if the Spirit's not actually leading and convicting you.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like, don't use any conversation that's heard on this podcast as a way to justify something that's bad in your life. If you're feeling convicted, if you're playing games too much, you're neglecting your responsibilities, you're neglecting your own like quiet time with God, your family, you're skipping church, you're doing whatever. Like, if you're justifying bad behavior and you're coming here to hear us say video games are great, do them, play them, that's fine, don't worry about it. Like, that's not, that's not what we're here to do. We're not here to justify a sickness in your life. Like, but on the other hand, like, you can't just, we also don't want you to be able to use an argument, that our discussion that we had here, to just tell someone they're wrong.
Yeah. The human heart is an idol-making factory, and I think we all have to realize that it is constantly trying to make it a new idol in our lives, whether it's video games, whether it's basketball, sports, our identity, our social medias, that we have to constantly be fighting against, because our hearts, there's a battle waging over them. And so I think that's part of what discipleship is figuring out, man, where is this thing? Is this thing have such a stronghold over me that if I can't give it up, it doesn't own me? I mean, I don't own it anymore. It owns me. And so I think that's constantly one of those questions I think we can ask in filtering this. Like, man, could I not do this for a day, for a week, indefinitely? And if I can't say yes to that, then the ownership is probably switched from me owning it to it owning me. And I think in any aspect of our lives,
I think sometimes the FOMO of it goes along with it. Like, you're like, whether that, I think that happens with Netflix or with anything else, or movies or anything that comes out and it's in the conscious of culture at that moment. And you're like, oh, I'm missing out on this. Yeah. I got to keep up. And then at that point, what are your reasons for doing it? Are you enjoying it? Are you having fun doing this thing that you're doing? Are you just doing it to appease people around you? It's just so you're relevant with other people. Like, that's not a good reason to do anything. Really.
Yeah. Would you have any like thoughts on the parenting side of it? Because I mean, my kids are really young, so not even kind of in the age and being in, you gals, unless there's announcements coming, don't have any kids right now. And so as a parent, one of the, doing youth ministry, I had these conversations, and I always think for parents, we should be proactive parents. Yeah. And too often in parenting, we're reactive. I think especially when technology is moving as rapidly as it is, giving your kids any kind of device connected to the internet without having conversation, without checking it out first, without sitting down and playing it first or whatever, is just a dangerous thing. Like, how does this look for you?
I will say that I think the biggest advantage is understanding what you're putting in your kids' hands. If you do not have an understanding of what it is, if you do not know where to find like the chat feature and what they're saying to the people that they're talking to on those games, if you don't know like the context of the game, if you don't, I mean, if you don't understand it, then I would be very weary of putting that in a kid's hands. I think for me, I have an advantage because I'm already I'm a big video game fan. So my kids, they kind of know they're not going to get one over on me. They try sometimes, and then I walk up and push something on the keyboard. And I mean, they're still like 8 and 10, so they're young enough to not outthink me yet, but I know that's coming around the corner and I'll be lost. But I do think understanding it yourself and taking the time to understand it is probably the most important part of it. Play the game with them. This shouldn't be a babysitting thing. If you're willing to give it to them, to let them play it, and it's something that that they are really passionate about, like, I mean, obviously you can't do it all the time, but like, play it with them. Understand why they like it. Try to talk to them about it. I mean, it's just one of those things where I think sometimes parents who don't play video games and they have a kid who wants to, it's like it becomes this babysitting thing, and they're just like, okay, go play it, whatever. I don't care. And I think if you're willing to let that influence your child, you should be willing to understand what it is and how it works.
Yeah, it's not easy work, No. I think it kind of has become the easy button, just give your kid a device or a game. It keeps them entertained. But man, that's, as parents, it's our job to be proactively parenting our kids, not reactively, and to be responsible. We're caring for, their hearts and their souls are at stake. And so I think we just have to have that consideration to do the hard work before giving it to your kids. And maybe it's going to start your kids wanting to fight with you because everybody else has it and they don't get it. But we have to remember, we're not fighting with our kids. We're fighting for our kids in those moments. And so
kids know when they're loved.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It's like, they know when you love them. And so like, whether you're limiting them or not, I think as long as you do it out of love and they know that, and you're showing them love in the way that you handle that, that makes a big difference.
And they know why. I mean,
they're not, I think sometimes parents want to sell their kids short and they think they're, they just don't get it or whatever. But I think when you actually do it in love, like, they understand that. I mean, this is kind of a joke here, but I guess what want to say is, like, you look at like parents who spend all this effort, money, and time to take their kids to these little leagues and all these other like sporting things that they invest their lives into. And it's like, when they get older and like esports are the thing that makes all the money, which now it already makes people winning those competitions and make a lot of money. I'm just saying, like, hey, my kid might have to give your kid a loan or something. That's what I'm just saying.
They do have like video game scholarships to colleges now. It's
oh wow,
crazy.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
it's. I mean, people don't want to take it seriously, but that's usually about that point is when it, the rug comes out from under you. When you think, no, this isn't a real thing. This can't happen. Well, just get ready for it. There's my prophecy. Would anyone else like to prophesy around the table before we end today?
I am not going to.
No thanks.
Do that around video games.
Oh, okay. Just kidding. Yeah. Anyway, I think it's going to be a tough conversation to have, and I think it is for people, just because depending on your level of competency in the subject, like, it's just, I don't know. Everyone's gonna have a different opinion. And that's the way it is.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and our hope here is to have those conversations that are uncomfortable and lead towards discipleship. Like what Rachel said, it's not us to be authoritative. I think because I said so, whether you're a parent or a leader in the church, is a huge missed discipleship opportunity. Yeah. And so we have to get better at just having the dialogue and not just because I said so.
Right.
All
right. I think that does it. Anybody else have anything else? No? All right. It's been real fun. Diving into the video games today.
Happy November!
Yeah, and I mean, it is appropriate because there are a lot of video games coming out in the in the holiday season. So go buy them all, right? No, I'm just kidding. Thanks for listening. If you have any feedback for us, please send that to us on social media at CCC Omaha, or you can email this podcast directly. That's at podcast@cccomaha.org. We'd love to hear from you. But until next time, I think that does it. We'll see you.